Hey, Kate, thanks for joining me for Lead Time Chats.
Hey, Jean, thanks for having me.
So good to see you. The topic I want to talk to you about today is something that I think a lot of engineering leaders face at some point, which is the question of, should I work with an external coach? And people just have a lot of questions about, what do you get out of it? Like, what's it good for? What's it not good for? And as someone who has worked with different external coaches, and I know you're also going through coach training, I thought, this would be the perfect topic for us to chat about.
Yeah. I feel strongly that everyone will benefit from coaching. It can be hard to find the right coach to work with, but if you're not getting enough out of it, then it's probably a sign that you haven't found the right coach yet. And yeah, it's been really valuable to me.
In your experience, because I know for some people, like you probably have a sense of like, if you were to find a coach now, and same for me, like you actually have some calibration of what a right coach looks like. What does that look like for other people who may have not worked with a coach before?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing with a coach is somebody who you can build a relationship of trust with so that
Mhm.
you can take to them the things that it's maybe harder or inadvisable to talk to your manager or your peers about. And
Mm,
so, somebody who you can have sufficient trust with that they can kind of lovingly push you and call you on your shit.
mm. What are some of the things that you found useful to work with a coach on versus working with someone internally at a company?
Yeah, I think it's much easier for me to take to my coach like a bunch of like random nonsense and overwhelm and then have them like help me sort through it. And then by the time I talk to say my boss about it, I'm like my thinking is more structured and I know what
Mm,
I'm asking for. So like that's a big help. I think the other thing is situations where I feel like I'm failing,
mm,
and going to the coach with those so that, again, they can help me sort through it and feel more like empowered or more able to address it. Whereas,
mhm.
if I went to my boss with something that I felt like I was failing for, like he might feel like he needed to fix it for me or what have you.
Yeah.
And then, the other thing that I think is really valuable is being able to create a continuity across workplaces, right? So I've
Mm,
been working with my coach for a long time. Like I've had 3 different jobs in the time that we've been working together. And so, like, firstly, like we have a high level of trust and context, but also, in those kind of transition points between jobs, she's been really able to support me and especially when I'm like not sure, like probably the two sides of that that's kind of most helpful is like when I was in the place where I was thinking like, is it time for me to look for my next job? Obviously that's
mm.
not something that I'm necessarily going to want to talk to my boss about.
Right.
um and then
Or they
the
may be
second thing,
biased, right? They want to keep you. So.
well, yeah, I mean if they don't, it's a different problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then of course my last manager just never had one-on-ones with me, but and then the other side is like coming afterwards. And if I am in my new job, but still kind of carrying some amount of like trauma, say from my previous job, like my
Mm,
coach can help me kind of pick through what's important there and what's not.
right. So your coach is someone who has that long-term context, and it sounds like like you've built up a relationship with your coach such that you can come to them with like, okay, I'm super overwhelmed and I feel like I'm failing. Let me just like brain dump or like just everything out, and then we can sort through that together. Whereas you, depending on your job and your manager, you may not feel comfortable doing that because that can carry like, oh, what if now because I said I think I'm failing, they think I'm failing, or they feel like I'm struggling because I came to them in this like pretty unfiltered state.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like I might not feel comfortable with it, but also like it's maybe not helpful. Like I have like an hour a week. Like I used to
Yeah.
report to a CEO, right? Like he had no time for
Yeah.
anything, right? Now I report to the CTO, and like he would make a lot of time for me, but I didn't want to waste his time on like, when I'm a ball of
Mm-hmm.
crazy. I want to take that to my coach, and then I want to use the time I have with my manager like really effectively.
Yeah.
And then as a manager who has had people I report to working with external coaches, it's also been really valuable because it gives me space to say, like, you know what, maybe I'm not the best person to help you with, and this, and like an external support can be kind of helpful to you. And I think, you know, with the best will in the world, like you might really care about the long-term success of your directs and want to kind of really help them as people. But I think part of, you know, being good at that is like accepting that sometimes that help doesn't, maybe you're not the best person to help them with certain situations, and kind of pushing them to find something else.
Yeah. So when you've had people that report to you work with a coach, how did that start? Was it that you recommended it to them? Because I know one question people have is like, how do you like suggest other people get coaching?
Yeah, so I mean, I was really lucky. Like at DuckDuckGo, everyone at a certain level gets a budget for coaching. So,
Sure.
you know, all my peers and above, like it's kind of expected that we're in coaching, and it's seen as valuable. Automatic, where I was before, I had like a very like extensive coaching program where coaching was available to everybody down to the IC level, and the amount of it that you could get kind of varied, you know. So like it was very, like in both those environments, the thing that's good about it is it's very normalized, that you know, people expect to be working with a coach, the company values it, the company pays for it, and you know, so then it's kind of varied. But like for coaching, it's the same with a lot of things, right? Like we have professional development budgets, we have whatever, like EAP groups, like there's a bunch of resources that get provided by companies, and not everybody takes full advantage of them. So I just tend to treat coaching as like a neutral thing in that set, to be like, okay, well, you know, we have this list of things available to you based on like what you're trying to do, what you're struggling with, whatever. This could be a good option to take. I think to kind of come back to the kind of first thing of like, how do you find a coach to work with? People do find that difficult. And so one thing that I've kind of done lately, whether it's like a friend and I'm like, maybe it's time for you to try this, or somebody I work with, is to give them a starting point and say like, hey, you know, I think this coach could be a good person to talk to first. Like, why don't you just have a chat with them? And if they decide to chat to other people, like, that's great. I'm not invested in it. But you know, I kind of over time, especially at Automatic, where we worked with a set of coaches, I had like a good idea of like which profile matches to which person, you know, and I have a few coaches who I think are really good, who I'm happy to recommend.
Yeah. What are some of those, like, what did some of those fits look like?
Yeah, so I think it, you know, like my coach, she's very like zero bullshit. She has a lot of experience, and I think she, you know, so I sent one of my friends to work with her lately. I was like, I think you should talk to Danny. I think she could be good for you. And it was kind of like, I felt like my friend like really needed to kind of come to the first point, like be lovingly called on her shit, you know. So like she like spouted off a bunch of like to me that she'd previously communicated to her boss, which was perhaps not the best move. And I was like, look, you know, if you want to stop doing this, like this is a tool for you. Like you can call me anytime. I'm always happy to hear about these things, but maybe this person can really help you with the thing that you're trying to work on.
So more, it seems like you're matchmaking based more on like people's, like I know some people are also looking for like, oh, I'm a first time engineering manager, or I'm the like a CTO and I don't know what I'm doing, more in the like they want some like general coaching and some engineering specific stuff. Like they want someone who's been in their shoes before. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's kind of more and more of that. Like there's a couple of organizations that do it. And it's about matching people who are a few years ahead in their career. And then it's like this mix of like coaching and mentoring, you know, or in some ways I think it's almost like looking like kind of like a manager that's not weighed down by your organization. Like that's what you're kind of getting from these kind of relationships, which is fine. You know, I think, you know, in collective coaching, there's this idea that the client is capable, resourceful, and whole. Right. And I really love that idea because it suggests that, not suggests, but like it posits the premise that the person has the answers that they need, right? And that your role as a coach is to help them find them. Like if people are looking more for advice or support or kind of feel the need to like have somebody that gets it, like I think that's understandable. But I think for coaches in that situation, like one of the things I've seen is, and I've not worked with this kind of coach, but I've had people working with this kind of coach, and I'm like, oh, this person is like giving you their playbook, but it's not actually really making you better. Now, yeah, like now you just have somebody else's playbook, right? And cool, like these are useful tools, but I don't see that person growing in a way that I think they could have if they had a coach who was truly like challenging them and like trying to get them to come up with their own answers, right? And so that's kind of, one of the things that, I saw when I was taking coaching training is like, do you want to take coaching training because you want to be better at coaching, right? And for whatever reason, or do you want to take coaching training because you see it as a useful mechanism for giving advice to people?
Right. Yeah. And I think that can be one of the risks of getting a coach who's basically like someone who's been there, done that a few years ahead, is that it's way too easy without proper training and practice to slip into that, like, oh, when I was at this company and we ran into that problem, this is what we did, even in the most well-intentioned cases. And so what I've seen, I found this challenging too, and I was coaching engineering leaders full time. And so like when people message me and are like, hey, I'm looking for a coach, and I try to refer them out to people, I really try to get a sense of like, what is it they're looking for? Because some people are like, oh, I really want to work with someone who's been an engineering manager, an engineering director before. But then when you dig into what they actually want to work on, it's more about like, interpersonal issues or like their confidence. And I don't think that those are things you necessarily need someone who has an engineering background. It can actually be useful to have someone who's more has worked with like a wide range of people and not just engineers, because people are people.
Yeah, I think that's true. But also like there's this fallacy that we're going to get what we need from one person, like, and then it's like, oh, I don't get everything I need from my manager, so I need a coach now. It's like, no, like you get some stuff from your manager, hopefully you get some stuff from a coach. Like I think it's really important to have, for example, a work BFF, right? Like that's somebody who can, really help you. To have kind of like a wide network of people in comparable roles who you talk to regularly, right? And so then, to your kind of point, like people are looking for a coach, but they don't necessarily know what they need. But like the answer might not just be one person, right? The answer might be a coach and more participation in some kind of group, like more investment in a mentoring relationship, like more time with a work BFF, for example. Like there's a whole slate of options available to people, but they're not necessarily taking them all. And I think this is particularly like relevant in the kind of dark time that we live in now, because people do feel more isolated. And a lot of the ways that people would get passive support through like networking events or through the office or whatever, like those things are gone. And so you need to be a little bit more deliberate from like, what are you getting and who are you getting it from?
Yeah, for sure. Have you ever seen, what are some situations where you feel like topics or situations where working with an external coach is not such a good fit?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think an external coach should be like, this is why the good relationship and the like quality of the coach is so important, right? Like, I think the thing that is probably the topic is like the one you're most like not ready to take to an external coach, for example, or like where you take the wrong topic, like you take like, what should I do, but actually you don't have a choice about what you do because it's been decided, and it's really a question of like, how do I manage my feelings about what I'm doing? So sometimes I think it's a question of like, what piece of the problem and how do you frame it to your coach, right? But then as a coach, it's your job to kind of understand, like, why is this coming up? Why is this a big topic of conversation, right? And like, what does this person need to like move forward and be effective?
Yeah, I think a lot of times if coaches don't read behind what, like anyone can bring a topic to a coach and be like, hey, I want to be better at X, right? And perhaps there's something behind that, or like there's some other issue that everyone's like, oh, thank God this person's getting coaching. We can finally get them help with Z, right? Like, and then they're working with their coach on X the whole time. And then coaching is usually confidential. And so like, then how do you get that? Like you really want a good coach to either like dig in and figure out, okay, what's actually going on in this situation, or like, I know some companies will, if they do have like a full-blown coaching program, like make you write out some of your goals and like these are the things I intend to work with my coach on, get some feedback from your manager and those sorts of things. But I think that coaching in the workplace, there's some connective tissue between how the coach and the rest of the company.
Yeah. I mean, we used to fill in that kind of form at Automatic, and I didn't find it super valuable, to be honest. I was just like, I don't know, like whatever catastrophe like comes onto my plate each week, like that's what I'm gonna be like. It wasn't kind of a knowable thing for me, which I think is different when you are in like a senior leadership role and getting coaching like on an ongoing way, just to kind of manage the way that you need to work, versus when, you know, it's like, oh, I'm getting coaching because I'm a new manager and I need to work through these things, or like, oh, I got this difficult feedback and to work through it, I'm going to work with a coach on it. Like that might be like a tactical time boxed coaching engagement, right? And it's different from like an ongoing investment in like
I just need more support, right? I need ongoing support, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think those forms can be useful when it's like, it's less like, hey, I got this feedback, I'm also aware of it and I want to go work on it with someone. So then you would come to the coach with that issue, but more like, you know, sometimes there's people who the company feels like, or their manager feels like could use coaching, but perhaps like they need a little bit of structure around like what to talk to their coach about because they've never had coaching before.
Yeah, I think that's true. But often, like, I think that gap comes down to the individual self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
Like, if they have high self-awareness, then there's a match between what people think they need and what they think they need, right? And if they have low self-awareness, for example, it's like, oh, you know, I need to go to coaching to like truly own my like leadership space or whatever. And then like the perception is like, oh, you know, this person is in fact bullying their teammates, right? Like,
So yeah, so like I think it becomes more important to figure out how everyone works together when it's someone with low self-awareness. And I'm curious if you've seen some way to like make that work or like have that all fit together.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a good way, to be honest. And I like, one of the things I like worry about with coaching is like you send somebody toxic to coaching if the coach doesn't pick up on that, and like a lot of people, particularly like narcissistic people, hide that very well, right? Like that then the coach just kind of supports them in becoming even more toxic,
right? Because they only work with what they bring.
They only work with what the client brings them, right? And so, you know, like I've seen people with this like a very coherent narrative, right, about, you know, whatever, and like, you know, I've also been like, oh, I'll take you at face value, like help you, mentor you, or whatever, like suggest something to you. And then like later I find out a more holistic picture and I'm like, damn, you know? And I don't know if like over time as a coach, you would like get more tuned into that. Like, but I think, you know, you might not, because like it is your job as a coach to like show up for the person as they come to you and like really kind of believe in their capacity.
Right. Yeah. And I guess that's why a lot of coaches I've seen are doing like feedback or 360 feedback that people close to you will fill out. But, you know, I don't know how honest it's different than actually seeing how someone interacts in the workplace. And, you know, I've also seen coaches like sit down and talk to people at like the more executive levels, like sit down and talk to people a bunch of people one-on-one, or have quick phone interviews with folks and kind of aggregate that and get a more full picture of like what's going on with this person at work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great, but it's quite a significant time undertaking, right? So unless, you know, like a 360 assessment is incredibly expensive, right? It's not something that, you know, every individual can do. The level of engagement with those things is really variable as well.
So it sounds like overall, you think it's generally useful for everyone, especially if they feel like they need additional support that they're not maybe not getting internally. And like some level of self-awareness around like what you want to work on would be helpful as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just think self-awareness is like one of the things that dramatically like contributes to people's coachability and ability to grow
Right.
anyway, right? Like, and that perhaps is the warning sign as a coach, right? Is
Yeah.
if the way somebody's being treated continually doesn't match up to how they see themselves, is probably a sign that like there might be some self-awareness gaps there.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, self-awareness helps for everything. But yeah, coaching is good, but not for narcissists.
Coaching is good, but not for narcissists. That's the TLDR of this chat.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you so much, Cate, for joining me today. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too. It was lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.